Welcome back to Module 1, Lesson 4, Transatlantic Encounter, Part 3. We just finished with the native population dying off of the diseases that the Europeans gave because they had no immunity. And so what resulted is all of the population starts to unfortunately die off in the Americas, where they say roughly 90% of the population is going to die from disease. The Spanish are going to need to replace that workforce with someone other than themselves. So what they do is they go to Africa and they bring in the African, similar to what the Portuguese had done to go work on the sugar plantations of the Portuguese. Well, the Spanish are going to bring the Africans across the Atlantic Ocean to replace the workforce that was dying off because of the illnesses and the diseases that the Europeans were bringing. Oh, wrong direction. Now, as these people were being brought across the ocean, and one of the reasons why they're being brought across the ocean is this guy here, Bartholomew de las Casas, is going to say, stop using the native population for your workforce. They're not slaves. We're converting them to Christianity. Well, the Spanish listen to that and they say, well, okay, we won't use the native population for our slaves anymore, but who's going to do the work? And the Spanish don't raise their hand and say, oh, I will. And so what ends up happening is that's another reason why the African gets brought across the ocean. And the end result becomes, from beginning to end, roughly 12 million Africans are going to be brought from Africa to the Americas. 12 million. And none of them are going to have their hands raised and say, ooh, please put me on a ship and bring me 3,000 miles away from home. 12 million Africans. As people start to come across the ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, people are going to realize that there is potential wealth opportunities here, particularly nobles and merchants. Nobles being able to claim more land, merchants be able to sell product that is new back in Europe. Or we have some poor people living in Europe that are going to leave the continent and they're going to come over to the Americas for a new life. Some of you, after graduating from high school, you're going to get out of Hayward as fast as you can because you want a new life. You want someplace where you can get a job. And that's what people in Europe were thinking too, except your thought of moving away might be to Eau Claire or Madison or Chicago or Minneapolis. These people, their idea is to go 3,000 miles across the ocean and live in the Caribbean islands for a new life. A little bit more difficult than going down the road, but yet the idea is roughly the same. As people start to go back and forth between Europe and the Americas and Europe and Africa, they start to bring products with them back and forth. And this is referred to as the Columbian Exchange. And there's items that are listed that were native to the Americas and items that were native to Europe and Africa. What I'd like you to do is write down 4 of these items on your notes and 4 items that you're going to remember, not just the first 4 that you see. If you don't like avocados, don't write avocados down. But if you like guacamole, that might be a good thing to write down and say, oh, that came from the Americas. Or if you say, oh, man, I can't make it without a cup of coffee in the morning, I'd write down coffee beans as a product that was coming from Europe or Africa, because those items were not native to the Americas, nor was avocados native to Europe. So those things are going to be swapped back and forth. And as people start to go back and forth, and particularly the 2 biggest countries initially are going to be Spain and Portugal, and they start to compete for land. And as they're competing for land, just as when you play musical chairs, there's that one seat, then you kind of, you squiggle your way onto that seat so the other person doesn't get it. That's what was happening between Spain and Portugal. And so what the Pope Alexander VI does is he issues the Treaty of Tordesillas between Spain and Portugal, and says, okay, I'm going to draw a line, and everything west of this line is Spain, and everything east of this line is going to be Portugal. Spain and Portugal said, oh, okay. There's no satellites, there's no GPS, there's none of that to give assistance as to whether this line is equal or not, but it gets drawn, and Spain is going to get all of the land claims that are in green, and Portugal is going to get all the land claims of land that's east over there in the North and South American continent area. Specifically, this little portion of Brazil is what Portugal is going to get. This is the reason why we don't talk about Portugal much after today. We talk about Spain quite a bit, specifically in the next lesson, but Portugal, they're kind of out of our history book or out of our referencing because their power just doesn't quite expand because they have very little land, which means very little trade routes, which means very little taxes, which means very little military, and they just kind of exist. Spain is going to grow largely due to this treaty.